Welcome to a new episode of Sustainability Drivers. Join us for an electric ride into a sustainable future, together with some of the most innovative thought leaders shaping what's going to be next.
Cool, Kara, that you're with us today. Good to have you on our sustainability podcast drive.
Thank you.
So, may you introduce you?
Happy to. Yeah, my name is Kara Pecknold. I'm an executive design director at Frog and lead for sustainability, especially when it comes to sustainability and design.
And what is Frog?
Frog is a global creative consultancy that really is looking to shape future businesses, products, services, really transform the way we show up in the world, using inclusivity, sustainability, really making a place that has all the things we need that are good for people and planet.
That's interesting. Cool. So as you know, we are all tackling climate change at the moment, and we need to act actually. Does Frog have dedicated sustainability goals?
Yeah, I think being part of Capgemini and Vent has given us a chance to really align with a larger set of goals. On our projects, we've always thought about social, environmental, and climate, but what we're doing now, I think, is pushing that trajectory even farther and faster as far as the kinds of things we're interested in shaping. And a lot of those types of things, as I said, relate to, sustainability in the product, service, and experience space, sustainability in building a new business. What does sustainability look like if you're trying to change your current business? And what does it look like to have a team that can actually execute on it? And so, sorry.
What was that?
And that threw me back. Is that to wake me up?
Exactly. We have some, sometimes there are some entertainment points included.
And you need some funny laughter or something. Excellent.
Okay, cool. Sorry for the interruption.
No.
As I understand it, Frog is a design company, right? So what kind of challenges or obstacles do you face currently when it comes to sustainability goals and how to design them and shape them?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think some of the challenges we face are honestly sometimes the kind of company's readiness. So we might be working with a company and it's not really ready to change or shift or transform. And that can be hard. We understand it's a super challenging shift to become more sustainable as an organization. Sometimes it's actually availability of materials. There's a lot of attempts to transition to more sustainable materials, but when we start to unpack what that requires, we might not have enough of those sustainable materials. So that makes it hard for us to design something in a more sustainable way.
What exactly do you mean by sustainable materials? Can you give us an example?
So imagine we want to convert something from plastic. There are solutions out there, but many of those solutions, when you sort of go under the hood and look deeper into what's possible, some of them, if you want to make a level of product at scale, there's actually not enough of that material available because it's in such high demand across so many different organizations and companies.
And how can we change that, or companies change that?
Well, I think it means we need to be inventive and creative and really different, and we need to push the needle and disrupt. We worked with a really great organization that's actually looking at how you can take wood waste material and transform it into a thermoplastic that actually is carbon negative. That doesn't come because we look at the old ways of doing things. Google Google wanted to join the drive.
Yeah. Maybe that's innovative as well.
Yeah, you could say.
Maybe they want to add something in terms of materials. Okay, anyways. Okay, thanks, Google.
Yeah, no, I think there's this space for the startup world to really help companies think differently about what's possible in the future. And the example of this Berlin-based startup that we worked with has a real innovative product that is enabling a carbon negative material to be developed. That doesn't come because they've done business as usual. It comes because they're giving themselves as a smaller organization the permission to disrupt and to be pushing the boundaries. And I think larger companies should look at some of those ways to push the boundaries and to have smaller pockets of experimentation and risk taking, because truthfully, if we kept going at the scale we're going at, we're never going to meet the climate targets that we have. So it does really mean, I think, partnering in a different way than we might have done before, and partnering with organizations, building up consortiums that can really transform the potential of these kinds of targets that every company has.
What would be the ideal ecosystem you could imagine in the future to really drive sustainability from an end-to-end perspective?
Well, I think some of it is, if I think about good design, good technology, good strategy. So having an ecosystem that plays with all of those types of things. If we look at other systems of organizations, so not every industry is going to have the same kind of setup, but if we were looking at something like a financial sector, the types of people who need to help people better report their targets need to not just be the banks. It needs to be people who are actually monitoring the materials and resources that we're using. So imagine you could start to navigate a conversation with a bank, but also with a company, and not about just the amount of money you're giving or taking from the bank, but the ways that the products and services that you're building have an impact in a larger system. And these types of consortiums are starting to pop up. We can see that there's opportunities in many industries, which I can't talk openly about, to begin to map either like companies or companies that have a shared resource that they need to try to be more creative with if they're going to meet their climate target.
Mm-hmm. Okay, got it. So, and I guess you're working on a global level, right? Mm-hmm. So can you benchmark the landscape of companies who are already achieving their targets, or do you think they're not pushing hard enough? Maybe you can give us a little bit clue around this.
I think the science-based targets are a really good starting point for how we look at the a level of requirement. And so if a company can start there, that's a great starting point. Making a commitment is the starting point. But if we look at the landscape, I think it depends what industry and sector. I think some things are harder to convert and harder to switch. We can see that in anything related to the oil and gas industry, that is we have a great dependency on fossil fuels. We have a great dependency on this particular resource in order for a lot of our life to actually exist. So some of it is, I think, well documented and well mapped. The inconvenience of it is that we have to reimagine new materials to be able to have this kind of quality of life. So yeah, I think it depends on what industry you're looking at. If we look at banking, there's one set of sort of criteria that people are looking at. If we look at manufacturing, there's another set of criteria. So rather than complicate the issue, sometimes it probably feels like we stay at a high level, but at the high level, there needs to be a commitment from the organization in order to move. How fast you move, I guess, depends on how much you feel the direct impact of what's happening in the world. It's hard not to look at fires in Australia, floods in Germany, and not ask yourself, is there some sort of correlation? And I think the IPCC has alerted us that there is, in fact, a correlation between our behavior and the nature of the world we live in. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I answered your question, but...
No, you did. That's fine. In regards to the IPCC report, let's imagine we are in the year 2030 and we are all already achieved our goals and we became climate neutral. Can you imagine what frog design is doing?
Yeah, I guess I'm skeptical of the 2030 mark. I think what I see around me indicates that there are entire systems that need to be changed. and with that, new things that need to be designed, and it's just so complex and intermingled that it makes it really difficult for me to picture that I'm not working to solve some of these challenges as a designer. But I think the thing for me that is changing is that I'm not just looking at a product as a product in isolation anymore. An example is looking at designing a new, product for solar energy. And how do we bring solar energy to people who don't have access to it? We talk a lot about changing the big energy systems, but sometimes those changes need to happen at smaller scale in order for adoption and behavior change to actually take place. And I think a lot of what we talk about when we talk about meeting climate targets, they are often talked about in the abstract. They're talked about from a technical perspective. They're like, what does 1.5 degrees even look like? What does that feel like? What would that be like? So I think for me, there's just this longer road, and I'd love to say it's going to be better at 2030. Sorry to bring pessimism onto the conversation, but I think there's a lot that needs to change. And really, when I think about what needs to change, often for a company, that means its purpose needs to change. And its reason for existing and its reasons for being. Not because they stop making everything they've made, but reassigning a new purpose to what you make, I think is going to make the big difference in the world. And because I believe that the talent of the future just simply will not tolerate a company that doesn't sort of stand up for something bigger than we make X widget or we make this thing, I think a larger purpose will be the bigger part of the conversation, and not in a greenwashing way, but in a way that's truly connected to the product, service, operations that a company exists to deliver.
Understood. So what is wrong with the system we are living in?
Well, this one's a hard one to say, because we live in a system that's very focused on consumption and acquiring. So the idea of living with less is a hard thing for any of us. We usually think of that as a painful thing. It usually is interpreted as I have to give something up. But I think the system is often very driven by the need to have more things. So I think that's where I'm asking myself the question, what are the things that bring the most power and meaning to the world? Is more things giving the essentials of life, energy in your home, clean air to breathe, food on the table? So when I think about industries and sectors that I really want to help transform or impact, I do think about things like farming and agriculture, because the food we need on our table is a really critical thing, and we need. If I think about being able to see and see on the streets safely and have a car that lights up so that I know where I'm going, then I think about really good sources of energy. And then it starts to resonate for me and make sense for me as far as what are we focusing our time and our attention on. The system is one that's riddled with lots of different opinions and lots of different realities, but I think aligning on sort of what do we share in common is part of how I view the system.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Got it. And if you could send out one wish to achieve climate goals or to change the system, what would it be?
My one wish, and it's as much a message to me, so let it not come across that I'm wishing that everybody would do this. I'm wishing I would do it as well. But I heard a great statement today, system change and individual change are not mutually exclusive. So my one wish would be that people understand their role and their impact on the world, and the way that what they touch has an impact on how much we use as far as energy and resources. But on the flip side, that collective of people would start to realize that when they start to change, you are part of the system. You are part of the system change. And it's not somebody over there or those people over there who lead whatever. It's actually on us from the perspective that we have a chance to really be people who rise up together to make change in the world. So my wish is that people would see that they can be the change that the world desperately needs in order to meet these targets.
Kara, thank you so much for this inspiring conversation.
You're welcome.
Wonderful for having you, and I wish you a wonderful day.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Did you enjoy the ride? Follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or YouTube to never miss an episode. Sustainability Drivers is a 48 Forward podcast powered by Capgemini Invent and Polestar, produced by the 48 Forward Studios in Munich.